Okay. Yeah. The topic on which I am speaking today is feudalism debate in Indian historiography. As you know, feudalism is a contentious issue as far as the Indian historiography is concerned. Uh, Whether feudalism was present in Indian history or in India is even now a bone of contention among the historians of medieval India. First of all, I present my list of references. Uh, Various historians have worked on this area, including R.S. Sharma, B.D. Chattopadhyaya, Harbans Mukhia, Vijay Kumar Thakur, and Herman Kulke, etc. are the major historians from which I have taken the materials for this presentation. And you can see also some references in Ubindra Singh, also in Vipul Singh, etc., etc. So the basic text with regard to this debate is Vijay Kumar Thakur, and another one is Harbans Mukhia. Harbans Mukhia's feudalism debate and V.K. Thakur's historiography of Indian feudalism are very much helpful for the understanding of this debate. You know, the Indian historiography with regard to a period after the imperial states or post Gupta and post Harsha period, it was that period was considered to be a dark age. Uh, Maybe because of the paucity of sources or lack of methodological devices, both the imperialist and nationalist historians shared the same perspective that there existed a dark age soon after or followed by Gupta as well as the Harsha period. And but there was a change of perspective among the historians, especially from the part of Marxist historians, which started in 1950s, which challenged the concept of dark age in early medieval India. What were their uh, uh, ideas or perspective with regard to the concept of dark age? Instead of presenting or uh, formulating this period as dark age, they put forward the idea or the concept of feudalism in Indian history. The debate or discussion of the existence of feudalism in Indian history was actually started by the Marxist historians. The first Marxist historian to refer to feudalism in India was none other than B.N. Datta. He was only mentioning there existed feudalism in Indian history, but that concept was later taken over by the great Indian historian D.D. Kosambi in his seminal work, Introduction to the Study of Indian History. In that work, he had critiqued the concept of Asiatic mode of production uh, presented by Karl Marx. Karl Marx had, according to D.D. Kosambi, the concept of Asiatic mode of production and the changelessness of Indian society, that was a blind following by Marx on Asian societies, and that should be refuted. According to him, the understanding of Karl Marx on Indian society was not based upon reality. And Kosambi contributed the ideas in rather a concrete way that he had introduced the concepts of feudalism from above, That was the first one. Then the second one, feudalism from below. These concepts were extensively discussed in his book with different chapters or two separate chapters. But for one or two decades, the idea or this debate or discussion on feudalism was not at all started, or it was not a concern for the historians. If we come to the concept of feudalism in Europe or in European context, we can see the features of feudalism, after which we can enter into the debate in Indian historiography. Uh, 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 that is for understanding or getting an idea about feudalism, what actually feudalism was. European feudalism existed in between 500 and 1500 CE, which was actually meant for subdivided political power and land-based economy and existence of a subject peasantry. And what were the key elements of feudalism? According to Mark Bloch, who is the author of Feudal Societies, that is a very important work or a classic work on feudalism in Europe. According to Mark Bloch, the key elements of the feudalism in Europe was land grants or fiefs, class of barriers, and fragmentation of political authority. These were the key elements of feudalism in Europe, and he had extensively written about these features. In the context of feudalism or European feudalism, that concept was taken over to the Indian context by Indian historians, especially the existence of feudalism, which was exclusively Indian, according to R.S. Sharma. Or R.S. Sharma was the first historian to put forward the idea or the image of or the concept of Indian feudalism. So this is considered to be or known to be Indian feudalism model. In the 1960s and 70s, the discussion was emerged among the Indian historians, especially the Marxist historians. And R.S. Sharma drew parallels between the European feudalism and medieval Indian feudalism. According to Sharma, India was a country, or India was an economy which witnessed the existence of feudalism, as in the case of European society. He introduced the concept of Indian feudalism and divided it into three phases. According to Sharma, there were three phases of feudalism. One between 350 to 750 C, and from 750 to 1000 C, and 1000 C to 1200 C. So all these ideas were included or presented in his classical or the most important work that titled Indian Feudalism. According to R.S. Sharma, the root cause or the significant cause of the Indian feudalism was none other than land grants. Land grants was the starting point of feudalism in India. That land grants were made by the by the local rulers, and religious institutions, not only for Brahmins, but also to the religious institutions. And this led to the emergence of landed intermediaries. Landed intermediaries was the result of these land grants, and that resulted to the decline of urban centers. So these are the most important uh, factors that led to or that began the process of feudalization of Indian society in early medieval India. And another feature, according to uh, uh, R.S. Sharma, was ruralization. Ruralization means the decline of cities in one way and existence of or growth of rural economy on the other side. So ruralization was characterization of Indian feudalism, according to R.S. Sharma. There were self-sufficient villages, agrarian expansion was there, and forced labor, otherwise known as Vishti, all these were common in this process. So there was a transformation from cities to the villages. And also, landlords held vast power over peasants. So landlords were becoming the local lords or the local power centers in the villages. And this process of ruralization was one of the important aspect of feudalism in India. And another aspect of uh, feudalism was, according to Sharma, the decline of trade. India was or is known for its overseas contacts with most of the continents in the world. For example, it had a very long-standing trade with Roman Empire, the Byzantium, and Greek Empire, and also to the western side and to the eastern side, India was in the middle of the trade, both overland and also the overseas trade. But according to Sharma, the long distance trade was coming to an end by third century, and this was leading to the decline in the silk trade route. So silk trade was one of the important or one of the very profitable business of that time, and India was also supplying the spices, but that was coming to an end. Uh, According to Sharma, R. Sharma argued for the decline of coins and urban centers, the paucity of coins or the the use of coins come to an end by this time, according to Sharma. So urban centers was coming to decline and coins were disappeared as there was no use of it because trade was in a declining phase. uh, R. Sharma put forward, as I have told you, the concept of land grants and the rulers. Why did the rulers resorted to land grants? That is another question. Or he explains why these rulers resorted to land grants. That was as a substitute for the cash salaries. He says that there was a lack of money or paucity of currency, so that the rulers were resorted to land grants as a substitute for salaries to their staff or employees. Sharma linked the land grants to the Puranic concept of Kali age. Kali age was the term he borrowed from Puranas. So that is, a dark age, or that is a period of social and economic distress. It is not a good time, or so it was representing the natural calamities such as drought and also floods. And also there was, according to Sharma, there was a intermingling of the caste. Intermingling of the caste was another. Sorry. Yeah. Intermingling of the caste was another problem or another issue with regard to the Scully age. So, the Scully age was a Puranic concept in order to explain the natural calamities such as drought and famine, apart from the oppressive taxes. All these were coming in the rising during this time, and according to him, in a period between 3rd and 4th centuries, the lower Varnas discarded to do the functions assigned to them and refused to pay taxes. So this led to the Varna Sangara, or intermixture of different social groups. So this situation made collection of tax very difficult, and the rulers finally resorted to land grants. So that is the explanation provided by R. Sharma for his borrowing of Kali Yuga as a new concept, which is applied in the context of this early medieval period. So all these were the contributing factors to the emergence of feudalism in India, according to R. S. Sharma. Then what about other historians? Or when this was transformed to be a debate, who were the proponents of this theory or this concept of Indian feudalism of R. S. Sharma, and who were the historians who were criticizing or arguing against the concept of Indian feudalism? We can examine. The first thing, that is proponents of Indian feudalism. Who were the important historians supporting R. S. Sharma? The most significant names include that of D.N. Jha and V.N.S. Yadava. D.N. Jha, he is a very significant, he is the historian who has made significant contribution to the ancient Indian history, and he has written extensively on economic and social history. And V.N.S. Yadava also, the eminent historian, and supporting and elaborating the theories or this model of Indian feudalism. V.N.S. Especially V.N.S. Yadava's study on North India during 12th century is regarded to be the third major contribution to the Indian feudalism model. Yadava endeavored to provide new and much needed evidence for an increasing practice of land grants to military officers and for the mobility of the peasants. So Yadava was getting, or he was exploring more inscriptional evidences to substantiate the idea that land grants was very common during this period. So the idea of Indian feudalism on the basis of land grants was supported by Yadava's explorations. And in the case of D.N. Jha, he elaborates, or he started to elaborate on the concept of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga was a new concept as far as Indian historiography was concerned. So, D.N. Jha was elaborating or working more and more, and was trying to shed light to the idea of Kali Yuga. Then, who were the major critics of Indian feudalism model? Indian feudalism model was not a accepted or universally accepted one in the case of historiography or historians of India. The most important historians who stood against this concept were D.C. Sarkar, Harbans Mukhia, B.D. Chattopadhyaya, Herman Kulke, etc. These were the important historians who critically approached or critically engaged with the theory of Indian feudalism that was propounded by R.S. Sharma. D.C. Sarkar outrightly rejected the Indian feudalism model. He argued that Indian society did not experience any sort of feudalism in India as in the case of Europe. Feudalism, according to him, was a misnomer in the context of India. This is an important point that he stated that feudalism is a misnomer in the context in the Indian context. So his argument was against the applicability of feudalism to early in medieval India because there is no ample evidence or there was undeniable scarcity of sources for service tenure. Service tenure was a most important component of European feudalism. And that was not at all existed in India as far as DC Sarkar was concerned. So that on this point, DC Sarkar argued that there was no service tenure existed in Indian society. And because of that reason, he was not ready to accept this theory. And he clarified that it is absurd to argue that after the fall of Guptas in the 6th century, India exhibited the characteristics of feudalism based on payment of services in land instead of coins. So all the aspects or the points put forward by R.S. Sharma was questioned by or challenged by DC Sarkar. He also refuted the logic of formulating the feudalism thesis in an economy marked by dearth of coin and the absence of trade and commerce. That was also another bone of contention as far as DC Sarkar was concerned. He refuted the logic of formulating the feudalism thesis in an economy marked by dearth of coin and absence of trade in commerce. And Sarkar was emphasizing that there was always plenty of coins in the markets. So that was, according to him, an absurd idea to argue that there was no coins or the coins were absent in the trade and commerce of that period. He submits that the class, caste, and clan-ridden society of India left no scope for the development of feudal tendencies. That was another point, that Indian society was a graded society. There existed classes or castes and clans, so that India left no scope for the development of feudal tendencies as in the case of the European or Western European society. His conviction was that what is confusingly understood as feudalism in Indian history was nothing but landlordism. That was DC Sarkar's most important argument. And he stated that landlordism confused with feudalism. So R.S. Sharma's views or concepts of feudalism was outrightly challenged by DC Sarkar with his own ideas or with his own explorations. Because, DC Sarkar had extensively worked on Indian feudalism or early Indian history, so that he is an authority to state that the Indian society or Indian society was not at all feudal as argued by R. Sharma. So all these concepts put forward by R. Sharma were challenged by DC Sarkar. According to him, there was always plenty of coins in the market, and there are no sources to prove that there existed service tenure and Indian society was you know a caste and class ridden society, and because of that reason India left no scope for the development of feudalism. So his term for feudalism was landlordism. Then what about Harbans Mukhya? Harbans Mukhya, I think all of you know, he's a legend in medieval Indian historiography. He has written extensively on medieval India, and he was a professor of JNU. And Harbans Mukhya is another authority on medieval Indian history, also came up with his disapproval of the feudalism model of R.S. Sharma. He was also not supporting the ideas put forward by Sharma, and he raised his criticism in a paper titled "Was There Feudalism in Indian History?" That was a paper or presidential address in one of the Indian History Congress's medieval Indian history sessions, and his paper, I think that was in Voltaire in the year 1976, and in that paper he was raising scathing attack on Indian feudalism model, and he says that Harbans Mukhya attempts to establish that there had never existed a social system called feudalism in India. That was his primary observation. There had never existed a social system called feudalism in India. So feudalism, according to as in the case of DC Sarkar, in the case of Mukhya also, feudalism or feudal society or the existence of feudal society in medieval India was a misnomer, or another. Otherwise, it can't be accepted. He firmly believes that feudalism, like many other social formations, before or after that, was only a transitional system. That is an important aspect of his argument. Feudalism was nothing but a transitional system. It was a transitional, that it is part of transition. In such a way, it positions midway in the transition of Western European economy between slave-based agricultural society and capitalist mode of production. What is feudalism? In the context of Europe, medieval Europe, that was a period, or that was an economy that is sandwiched in between the slave economy, slave economy, and capitalist economy. So that was the result of a transitional process. And his core issue of debate was that in Europe, feudalism arose as a result of crisis in production relations based on slavery on the one hand, and the changes resulting from growing stratification among Germanic tribes on the other. So in Europe, in the European context, that was, or feudalism was emerged as there was a crisis in the uh, production relations based on slavery on the one hand, and the changes resulting from growing stratification among Germanic tribes on the other. So these two important aspects or historical factors were resulted to the emergence of feudalism in the Western European society. But in India, he criticized that according to the protagonist of feudalism model in India, it was primarily a state action. So it was, or Indian feudalism was not part of the crisis or the eventual transformation of one mode of production to another mode of production. So in India, it was a primarily a state action, which means that the feudalism in India was the product of, or the after effect of the state. To be clear, that was the result of land grants. Land grants was done by the rulers, the state. So, contrary to the Western European feudalism, Indian feudalism was a man-made one, or the result of the state's interventions. So that was the basic argument put forward by Harbans Mukhia. And Mukhia's contention was in relation to the existence of subject peasantry. When I discussed the features of European feudalism, there was an element of existence of subject peasantry. That was the concept, or that was the argument put forward by Mark Bloch. In Mark Bloch's book, we can see the existence of such class of a peasantry, which was subjected to the lords. So, in the case of India, according to Mukhia, we can't say that there existed feudalism, or sorry, subject peasantry in the period under discussion. So, the core of feudalism, that is subject peasantry, that was very familiar to European feudalism, that is not at all present. There is no supportive evidence to prove that there existed subject peasantry or serfdom in the Indian context. He underscores that there is no ample evidence for existence of subject peasantry or forced labor. There was no forced labor, according to Mukhia. And he elaborates this by stating that there is a reason for the absence of serfdom in Indian history. What are the reasons for the absence of the serfdom? If you argue that there doesn't exist subject peasantry or serfdom, as in the case of Europe, you will have a reason. So Mukhiya's reason was that, firstly, the fertility of Indian soil in general appears to have been far higher than that of Europe until 19th century. Indian soil was very much fertile compared to the European society. So that he argues until 19th century, the Indian soil was showing a very high fertility, and the productivity and production was also very high. So that there was no serfdom. Secondly, Indian agrarian history has been characterized by a predominantly free peasantry. That is another reason. Indian agrarian history has been characterized by a predominantly free peasantry. So the peasantry of India was very free. That is against the argument of, or that is the against the postulations of R.S. Sharma. So Indian peasantry was not at all, under the yoke of the overlords or the feudal lords. So that you can say, or Mukhya argues that there is no chance to the existence of a peasantry which is under the control of the lords. And he categorically states that the forced labor in India remains by and large an incidental manifestation of administrative power of the ruling class rather than as a part of the process of production. He never negates or completely negates the existence of the subject peasantry, the uh, forced labor, but he argues that forced labor was existed. There was forced labor, but it was used or as part of the political power, ruling classes administrative power was to be carried out using this forced labor, and never this forced labor was exerted in the process of production. So these were the arguments put forward by uh, Mukhya. Then there comes another model by some other historians or scholars who worked extensively on early medieval Indian history. One is B.D. Chattopadhyaya and the other one is Herman Kulke. Both are very familiar to the teachers and scholars of ancient and medieval Indian history. B.D. Chattopadhyaya and Herman Kulke are equally credited for their critiques of Indian feudalism model and for presenting an alternative model. Their model, they were criticizing, but at the same time, they were putting forward a new concept or new model against the Indian feudalism model. Chattopadhyaya, this model is known as integrative state model. That is, all these ideas put forward by both historians were against the declining model of R.S. Sharma. According to him, or according to B.D. Chattopadhyaya and also Herman Kulke, the early medieval period was marked by integration. All the statements put forward by R.S. Sharma was giving a picture that early medieval period was a period of decline of trade, decline of state, and decline of currency, everything. So, but here these scholars, uh, B.D. Chattopadhyay and Herman Kulke, are in the just opposite, traveling just opposite direction, and they are very confidently arguing that it was a period, or that period marked integration. There was integrating, the state was integrating, and the trade was flourishing, and the economy was also booming. All these were the arguments put forward by them. And what about B.D. Chattopadhyaya? B.D. Chattopadhyaya identified certain important processes that were at work in Indian history, including in the early medieval, that the expansion of state society through local state formation. He says that, Chattopadhyay states that there was the expansion of state society through local state formation. Instead of decline of states, there was state formation, but it was local. It is true that there was no uh, uh, big empires, but the state was forming, and the transformation of tribes into peasants. That was another aspect. Transformation of tribes into peasants. That was another process. And the expansion of caste. That is also another uh, significant process. And also a cult of appropriation and integration. A cult of appropriation was also started during this time. So this model highlighted cultural, religious, and political integration during the early medieval India. Ermal Kulke was also offering further refinement and elaboration to the model. And he stated that it was a Chattopadhyay's, we can also elaborate the arguments of Chattopadhyaya, uh, that according to him, he was challenging, Chattopadhyaya was challenging R. Sharma's thesis on decline of trade and urban decay. That is, I think, his most important contribution to this debate. That he was challenging R. Sharma's thesis on decline of trade and urban decay by providing empirical evidences to prove that foreign trade did not decline but continued. So earlier we could see that R. Sharma was in a position to argue that there was no trade. The long distance trade was ended by the time, or by third century itself, and every town or major towns were declining. But all these things were challenged by providing empirical evidence. He was not at all arguing without any evidence. He had abundance of evidence, and he proved that foreign trade did not end or decline by that time. And again, he added that the period witnessed the decline of certain trading centers. He agreed that there was decline of certain trading centers, but at the same time, there were others that continued to flourish, as well as some new ones were emerged. So urbanization was there. There was some, trading centers declined. That is quite natural. But others were continuing very strongly. And also new centers were emerged or flourished. The archaeological data on the matter are inadequate, he says. But he was focusing on some foreign notices that of such as Huensang. According to Huensang, cities such as Thaneshwar, Varanasi, and Kapilavastu were in decline. That was quite natural. Such cities or such were very important and prosperous cities in one time. But the cities such as Ahichatra, Atranjikera, Rajkot, and Shirant were continued to be inhabited during the early medieval times. These were the cities which existed even during the early medieval times. And also, there were some new cities. He came up with epigraphic evidence. B.D. Chattopadhyaya produced some epigraphic evidence from the Indo-Gangetic divide, the upper Ganga basin, and Malwa plateau, with special reference to some cities such as Pritudakka. Pritudakka is in Haryana, Tattandapura, that is in UP, Siani, that is in MP, and Gobalgiri, that is in Gwalior. So these were the new cities. Even though one group of cities were faded, some other were existed, but new cities were getting into the fore, coming into the fore. He states that these cities were emerged and became prominent commercial centers during the early medieval times. So he's of the view that the economic basis of urban centers was an agricultural surplus generated by expansion and new methods of cultivation. So agrarian expansion was there. That agrarian expansion was giving space to the emergence of surplus production, and that naturally leading to the emergence of cities as economic flourish was the feature of that time. So, accepting the fact that some old cities were declined, Chattopadhyaya argues that a new kind of urbanism was visible due to the agrarian expansion. And Chattopadhyaya believed that it marked the third phase of urbanization in India. So, even this agrarian expansion that was mentioned by R.S. Sharma, according to B.D. Chattopadhyaya, was giving a way to the urbanization. He was not at all accepting the earlier theory or earlier argument propounded by R.S. Sharma that this period was, witnessed by the complete decline of this, urbanization process. Then what about other ideas? Cultural and social integration. Chattopadhyaya is of the view that the period was, or early medieval period was, a period of cultural and social integration. This period was very much a period of various cultural expansions, and society was getting into integrated. So instead of looking the early medieval India in the perspective of an age of decline, it is suggested by Chattopadhyaya that the historical developments in the period should be examined with a long-term perspective. So the period of early medieval India should be considered with the long-term perspective. Otherwise, you can't get to the reality or the actual historical process. According to him, the tendency to brand the age as that of political decentralization, fragmentation, and degeneration is rather misleading. So these are the concepts put forward by R. S. Sharma, D.N. Jha, and uh, Yadava, etc. So that kind of a concept or that kind of an understanding of the early medieval may be leading us to the misrepresentation of history, according to uh, B.D. Chattopadhyaya. So that was, instead of a political decentralization or fragmentation and degeneration, this period was essentially a period of cultural and social integration. So, what do you mean by, or what does he mean by the integration process? That was a positive or an attempt to positively understand the period. It may be sensible to consider the development in the regional levels in a larger historical framework rather than in a pan-Indian perspective. So, if you want to get to the historical process in a scientific manner, you have to look into regional histories or regional level developments rather than taking India or pan India as a whole. So that is one aspect or one important aspect of his argument. In order to clarify this position, he presents three major interrelated historical processes that help to understand the process of state formation. So in regional histories or regional areas, he says that there were three major interrelated historical processes uh, that will make us helpful to understand the process of state formation. The first is economic aspect, that is the expansion of agriculture. During the periods or during the early medieval India, there was a expansion of agriculture. And the second aspect is social process, which is consequence of the economic process, where the indigenous tribes were got incorporated into the caste system at the lower levels. So there was a process of uh, um, casteization from the tribes. So tribes were incorporated into the caste system. Until then, that process was not so common, but it was parallel to the expansion of agriculture because there is a chance of getting more and more labor force in the expansion of agriculture or in the spread of agricultural process, so that the tribes were getting into or they were incorporated into the labor force. And this process is variously described by historians such as from tribe to caste and otherwise known as acculturation and peasantization of tribes. So these processes were very much important in the process of integration. The religious process was actually contended on the cult appropriation and integration of local cults. So you can see there was a religious integration involved local gods being absorbed into major cults of Vishnu, Shiva, and Shakti. So that was another important process, as Chattopadhyaya argues. So that, uh, here these are the arguments put forward by B.D. Chattopadhyaya. And we can see another historian, Herman Kulke, who expanded this integrative state model, linking political ideology to bhakti cults and royal patronage of temples. So Kulke also was trying to put forward a new model of the uh, state formation, and he examined the transition of tribal chief to Hindu Rajas. So that kind of a process also was taken place during this time, and he put forward the model, processual model of integrative state formation. So there was a processual model. According to him, uh, uh, there was a transition of tribal chief to Hindu Rajas. And, we can see urbanization. Urbanization was very much prevalent or present, according to Chattopadhyaya and Herman Kulke. Chattopadhyaya identified early medieval urbanism based on agrarian expansion, and contrary to the concept of Dark Age theory, this period marked the third phase of urbanization. So, the last point, several other issues which are dealt by the model of Kulke are development of regional kinship systems, codification of regional norms, Sanskritization, Kshatriyization, Hinduization, the spread of caste, the shift from Sanskrit to regional languages, and the emergence of new regional identities. All these are the uh, part of the processes of integrative state formation. So, contrary to the idea of decline of states or the powerful state or the empires and the decline of trades, absence of trading centers, and demonetization, the historians on the other side were putting forward a new perspective that there was no feudalism. There was, uh, we can't say there was a decline in the economic process. There was blooming of the state. The regional states were integrating. Socio-cultural processes were taken place. So both of the historians, both strands of historians were uh, putting forward their own arguments based on the historical facts. They have their own evidences to believe or to argue that there was feudalism on the one side and feudalism is a misnomer on the other side. So the debate on Indian feudalism is not an ended one. It is an ongoing one with strong critiques and alternative models proposed by the emerging historians. So we can see that one important aspect of this Indian feudalism debate is that Indian historiography witnessed a rethinking of the case of early medieval Indian history. Until then, that was an untouched area. That was a no man's land. It was an unexplored area of historical research. But by 1950s and 1970s onwards, the early medieval became a very, strong and very present and energetic area of research. And due to this research, very serious research, we could get many dimensions of the historical processes. And also we have got many methodological novelties in exploring early medieval India or medieval Indian history. And this resulted in the uh, rejuvenation of the thought processes of historians and scholars of India as well as the world. So these are my few words. I know that this is not a complete one. I have only given a framework of this debate, and I am stopping now. And you can raise your comments or doubts or observations, if any. I welcome all your feedback and comments. Thank you all for patient listening.
Sir,
Thank you, sir.
I'm Sridhar Naik from Mangalore University.
Sir,
My
please.
question is mainly on the one side, Gupta period was a golden age. Another side, we are arguing that it was a feudal state and a dark age. What is your opinion about that?
Okay, thank you, sir. Golden age is a rather contentious issue as far as I am concerned, because golden age in what aspects? I am not opposing your question. My point is that this early medieval period, according to historians, starts uh, soon after the empires. You know, there was a darkness, or according to early historians, both colonial historians and nationalist historians, uh, there was a dark age, or it was dark after Gupta and Harsha's age. It was not during the Gupta period. I think it is a misconception that this dark age was during the Gupta period. It was after the Gupta period, sir. Gupta period was a very flourishing age in the historical or early Indian history. And again, there was another empire. We can call it empire, or you can call it a state, a vast state. After that, there is a period of, a stateless society, or according to early historians, not my argument, according to early imperialist historians and nationalist historians, there was no prominent state or prominent empires. So they believed that there was no power, there was no state. But actually, according to the recent historical research, there were states. The states were emerging, but all those were regional. There was no very pomp and glory, as in the case of Gupta's or Harsha empire or empires. So there is no meaning to argue that there was no state, according to V.D. Chattopadhyaya and Herman Gulke and other recent historians. Yeah. So that is why I am making clarification that please correct your question as in this way, that Dark Age was not during the Gupta period, but it was, if any, after the empires. I think,
Hello, sir.
yeah,
I'm
sir,
Robert
please.
Rodriguez from St. Mary's College, affiliated to Mangalore University. See, as far as periodization is concerned, the very idea of periodization itself is, controversial because, it may be British or anybody to that matter, for their selfish interest, that kind of a presentation has been made by them. Even I think, even many times scholars or historians also, calling a particular period as a dark age or stagnant period. Don't you think it's a wrong presentation of a particular period, because every period is under transitional changes. So calling a particular period as dark age, or that is something, don't you think it's a controversial process of presentation, sir?
Sir, thank you. Thank you for your question. Yeah, as you believe, I also think that this periodization of Indian history is another topic of, debate. That debate was started from colonial historians onwards. Mill's history of India itself. Indian history was periodized in the religious way. So there was Hindu India, Muslim India, and British India. And also there was stratification of Indian history from the part of nationalist historians. Especially their understanding was also not so much historical or scientific, as far as my understanding is concerned. So that anyhow, the considering a particular period as dark and a particular people or continent as dark is a historical. It is against historical methodology. So every age in the social process or historical process is very much important. So that was, I think, the picturization of a period as dark age was due to lack of sources. They had very little sources, or they had no sources to consider it as a flourishing, or it was as a period of integration, or in a period of agricultural expansion or urbanization. I think that may be the reasons or the causes to brand a period as dark age. I think
Thanks.
that is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sir.